Hey, welcome back. We're going to talk about craters today. Um, Something I might call craternary. We're just going to look at a bunch of pictures. Talk first about the different types of craters, and then look at examples. But to start off, just to give us an idea of what's going on with craters again. Let's go back up here. This little video is a slow motion representation of two glass beads being blasted into some sand at 5,400 feet per second. And as you watch this animation, you can see, well, not animation is actual footage, but you can see the crater forming. Now this projectile doesn't disintegrate, so while this would normally make a central peak, it's not going to. But you can see the ejecta being sprayed out. And if I fast forward a little bit, you can see where it gets splayed out away from the crater, and eventually, of course, the crater, of course, being the excavation in the center. There are several different kinds of craters. Simple craters are the kind that have basic, nice clean rims, no central peak in the middle here, and these are probably the most common craters because they aren't necessarily the smallest impacts. They can be anything from a small rock hitting to something that's meters in diameter hitting. The next type of crater are complex craters, and right away you can probably see a big difference between simple and complex. They're very similar except for this central peak in the center, and that's a rebound issue. So it's a rebound of pressure or a change of pressure going on in the center as a result of the impactor itself disintegrating. These are bigger impacts. They're not the biggest, but they're bigger impacts. Third type is called a multi-ring basin. These are less common, but you can see the concentric rings surrounding the crater, and those are formed from when an impact of this size hits, it causes the ground around it to actually ripple away, and the ripples, of course, get preserved, and you get a multi-ring basin. So it's a pretty significant impact to produce that. And finally, of course, craters or impacts don't always happen straight on, and sometimes you get oblong or elliptical craters. This is an example of one on Mars, where clearly this impactor did not hit straight on. Okay, so what I want you to do is, on a piece of paper, I want you to just list for me 1 through 9. I'm going to show you different kinds of craters, and I want you to go through and tell me what kind they are. So here's number 1. This is taken on the moon. Number 2. Is it simple, complex, multi-ring basin, or oblong? Number 3. Simple, complex, multi-ring basin, or oblong? Again, we're on the moon still. Here's one on Mars. Famous butterfly crater. You can see the ejecta being splayed off in these directions. But is this simple, complex, or multi-ring basin, or oblong? Number 5 is this crater on Venus. Is this simple, complex, multi-ring basin, or oblong? 6 is a multi-ring basin. Oops. 6 is another crater. Is this a simple crater, complex crater, multi-ring basin, or an oblong crater? Number 7, focusing in on the one here in the center. Number 8, focusing on this crater here. Number 9, again on Mars. Number 9, another question I might ask you is, what exactly happened with this particular one? We'll talk about that in class. Bring your notebook paper with your notebooks with your answers to 1 through 9 into class, and we'll discuss them when you get here. Okay, so here's just some other interesting craters. Sometimes craters, as we know on the moon, we've learned that on the moon they're colder at the bottom than they are in the rims. So the crater rims are, obviously they're basically circular mountain ranges, and then in the bottom you can often have frozen substances. In this case, it could be dry ice. The moon has examples of liquid water in some craters, so It's important stuff. The bottoms of craters can be useful for finding resources for manned missions to places. Here's another crater on Mars. This one's unique because you have a series of sand dunes in the bottom, which is kind of cool. Now, get your 3D glasses out if you have some, because if you do, you'll see the rim of this crater really pops out at you. This is just for fun. There's a simple crater and another simple crater. Feel free to go back and forth and pause if you need to, but these are both simple craters that show up really well in 3D. Here's another 3D image of a simple crater. The scarp on this one's impressive. Alright, well that's our discussion of crater types for today. I'll see you in class. Bring those notebooks. Have a great afternoon.